Berzansky from OneTeam360. We're talking about performance management for hourly or shift-based workforces. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing great. We got our One Team shirts on. We're rocking it this morning. It's nice. Let's talk about this morning. The company name is OneTeam360. So this idea of redefining feedback and performance reviews, getting that dialed into an organization feels like this big, weighty, huge sort of initiative. I would say if you surveyed most companies, they would say they do some form of this. And then most people would say it really isn't what we thought it was. Right. They know they're not doing it effectively. We're doing it because we know we should. We wish we had a better system, a better way of doing it that actually yielded the results that we're looking for. But we're doing it to some degree. This has been a fun sort of topic because you've actually come up with 7 principles around feedback that we'd love to dive into. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about redefining feedback and performance reviews. What's number 1?
In my eyes, number 1 is it has to be in real time. So this idea that performance reviews received 3 months or 6 months after the fact does more damage than it does good.
Which hurts because that's how we do it. But let's talk a little bit more.
I have this great system for you.
So doing them in real time versus doing them in quarters or semi-annual or annual, right? Tell me how you would do this in real time.
Yeah. So let me first back up. So we're a performance management system for shift-based workers. That's what we are. That's what we do. That's who we speak to. That's who we're going after. Okay. So when we talk about a professional office setting with quantifiable KPIs that people are working towards every quarter, it makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. We have goals for a quarter. We work towards those goals and we can achieve them. But when you've got shift-based workers who are coming in, when I look at my company, my primary business, I've got one employee who works 1 shift a week. I've got one employee who works 5 shifts a week. How do we judge them on the same level, right? So, they all need reviews. But in a year, let's just say I do an annual review.
Right.
In a year, one employee's worked 52 shifts.
Right.
The other employees worked
250.
Yeah, easy. Right. So how do we give them that feedback? And we've just missed so many opportunities to make them better. So, So the idea that it should be in real time is we took that and we ran with a daily feedback system. So the feedback works in 2 ways. First, we're called OneTeam360. So the first way is that they get to rate us as a business, and we suggest questions to ask, but every company can customize these questions. Did we give you the knowledge to do the job correctly? Do you understand the job at hand? Is there any other feedback you'd like to provide us as a business? And it's anonymous.
So you're getting feedback from the employee on a daily basis. And it's to the organizations, to the manager? How does that work? Yeah,
so it's based on however you set it up. We set it up generally manager, organization, and general feedback.
Okay, so you are getting 360 feedback, and it's a lot of, that's interesting, that's great.
And what I will say to every single person who I talk to about this system is, when do you find out that your employee is unhappy about their job?
When they've given you notice.
When they've given you notice, exactly right. So now from day one, as a first day team member, you get to tell me what you liked and didn't like about the system, the onboarding system, now the employment system, or the work you're doing, right?
Right.
And I have the opportunity to fix it. If I can fix it, I will.
So how do you get them to fill out a survey every day?
Yeah, it's great. So they get a push notification to their cell phone or to their computer, wherever it is.
So it's on their device.
It's on their device. It's all mobile friendly. App Store, Android Store, and basically they get a push notification saying, hey, log in to see your score, but first rate your team. So they get to then say, my manager was a jerk to me. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm expected to do something, and so sexually harassed me. Okay?
You're going big.
Let's go big. Why not? I mean, we've gotten all of those things. Right? Which we would never have found out until we got the
score.
Until we got the letter from the attorney saying we've been sexually harassing someone. I mean, I joke, but it's not a joke.
Right.
People are afraid to have face-to-face conversations, especially when they're tough ones. And especially when you're saying, my manager is rude to me. They treat me like crap. And I hate coming to work every day.
So you get this quick, objective way of identifying huge issues. I would imagine those are rare. right? But the other side of it is you get this ability to, the employee gets the ability to not only give their feedback to the organization, but they get to see like their objective performance as well every day.
Right. So the next step, once they've graded us, they get their grade, and their grade will be as simple as great job, you got a point today, or unfortunately you didn't get a point today, here's why. You arrived to work late and you weren't wearing your uniform. Okay, can't argue that. It's
right.
Objective. You knew what our goals are. You know what the expectation of employment is. You missed 2 of the goals.
Interesting.
And the beauty of the system is that, and I won't get into the point system, but everything can be weighted. Timeliness for me is number 1. So if you blow it on timeliness, it's going to be hard to get a point because I need my people there on time, right? Other companies might say uniform is important, or opening procedures or closing procedures are that number 1 importance thing.
It's interesting because most people tie their performance review to compensation. We know that's sort of a headache or a challenge because what people are doing is you're hedging your bets with your reviews, right?
Right.
You don't want it to be too glorious because then they're going to ask for a raise, right? And then you don't want it to be too negative because you want to sort of reinforce all the hard work that they've done. So most successful or great organizations will disconnect performance reviews and especially their cadence from compensation conversations. But what you're doing here is you're giving an objective measure every day or every shift so that when it comes down to that, like whether that's a compensation conversation, you have this like long history of objectivity that's tied to it. Gives them a lot of, power in that equation of knowing like, hey, this person's consistently a great performer.
Yeah, and if you think of it simplistically, they can essentially, it's not what we call it, but they can essentially earn a 3, a 2, or a 1 every shift. So when they are due for that raise or that incentive or whatever it might be, their actual performance within that 20-point level or 40-point level will be the determining factor. So they actually have charts on their home screen, on their dashboard, that show them, hey, as a level 1 employee, you're operating at about 60% efficiency.
I love that. So the real time provides just clarity, crystal clarity on where you stand and what you're doing.
100%.
That's awesome.
100%.
What's number 2?
So obviously, and we've kind of alluded to this, but it has to be tied to company values and objectives of the team. So we are taking the performance expectations and we are saying this is what needs to happen in order for you to get your points for the day.
Most organizations, their performance reviews are so fuzzy, right? They're all tied to these like rating scales of 1 to 10. How do you feel in this moment? And they're not what you described.
And they're written in a panic as it's been 4 months and someone's been working for 4 months or 6 months
right.
or a year.
Right.
And the manager goes, oh man, I've got to sit and do this stupid review. And
right.
And I can't remember if they were good or bad, but we had a bad week last week. So we're just going to say they were bad.
So you're going to skew them heavily towards
right.
whatever the previous 2 weeks performance is.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. I love that. Objective tied to company values and team objectives. What's number 3?
So including this 360 view that extends well beyond the immediate manager, right? So they give us feedback, we give them feedback. Again, when we're talking about shift-based workers, think about any retail environment, right? They work an AM shift, they could have one of 10 managers. They work a PM shift, they could have another one of 10 managers. So the system, because it is objective and because it is clean and we're giving them that daily feedback, they have real accurate data that they can even argue if they feel like there's something unjust or unfair.
I did show up to work on time, or I was wearing my uniform.
Exactly right. My manager wasn't there, and they just graded me that because whatever it is. So they actually have a voice in the review, and it's not something that gets swept under the rug. It is something front and center.
Right. Interesting. And because they're reviewing you, or to some degree, they're reviewing their management structure, they're reviewing the team environment. I like how you phrased it from the organization, like, I got everything I needed to be successful. Right, it gives a more holistic way to make sure that these people are successful, right?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I want them to be successful.
Right.
I want them to love their work. I want them to be passionate about what they're doing.
Right.
I want them to wake up and say, look, we're not always motivated to get up and go to work.
Right.
Right. We're human.
Right.
But if there's something that is if we've found a way to keep them excited about what they're doing, and essentially we've created these bumpers that are very clear.
Love it. Yeah.
end zones, I should say.
Sure. Bumper bowling.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. What's the fourth one?
So tying it to advancement. So as we go through these performance reviews, because they are so often, they have the opportunity to move up in our level system. So our level system is completely customizable. Okay, like I said before, it could be 20 points, 40 points, 60, however you want to structure it based on how often your people leave you. But as they march from level 1 to level 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, their performance is going to dictate what incentive or what bonus or what pay they're getting in this new level.
That's fascinating because it's not only tied to their performance. To some degree, it's tied to them being there and showing up, right? Like if you're describing this ability for them to move up and that performance review happens every time you show up, you're going to have a workforce that's actually more engaged because the people that are getting rated are the ones that showed up.
Yep.
And the ones that didn't just kind of drop off because they're not advancing.
Yep.
Oh, it's the system just driving itself, which is pure magic in my opinion. That's awesome.
You know, the old system was you aren't giving me what I need. It's your fault that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
No one can do this anymore. You literally hold the keys to the kingdom.
Right.
We all have the same information. We all have the same goals. It's all clearly written and outlined. There's no subjectivity. It's objective.
Yeah, you don't have to ask for a raise anymore because you know exactly how to get it.
In fact, they schedule through the system. They get a notification saying you've leveled up, and they can actually just literally look at their pie chart and know exactly what they're getting when they walk into that meeting. They'll know before we do.
Wow.
Because we don't have to do any pre-work. They show up to a meeting, I pull up the system, I say, okay, you're operating at 80%. Great, you get the max raise.
And you get to talk to them about and walk through it and have fun. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It takes all the stress out of the manager for that.
There is no stress you still have to have the conversation, but yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. All right, what's the next point?
So this idea that we have to include skills, commitment, and attitude. So really we're doing daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you choose to do as a business owner, skill assessments. And those skill assessments could be emergency action plans. It could be cash handling. It could be...
So you're baking in training into the performance review?
Yeah. So, we go back and forth on whether we're going to call it training or skill assessments.
Okay.
Because really we're not an LMS. We're not teaching them how to make smoothies for the first time. But we are doing a skill assessment during their employment ongoing, whether, again, weekly, month, whatever you choose to do as a business owner, whether they made that smoothie the correct way.
I see.
Okay. Or whether they cleaned that popcorn machine at the movie theater the correct way, or whether they cooked the hamburgers the right way.
So part of this sort of feedback system is how to do your job well. And
Correct.
There's an objective measurement in that.
Right. Because I'm going to tell you that you didn't do a good job of cleaning the fryer. And not once have you ever told me that you didn't understand that. Or maybe you have told me, and you've given me that feedback that the manager never taught you how to clean the fryer.
Interesting.
So now all the information is readily available for me.
How do you measure commitment and attitude criteria? Seems a little tougher.
Yeah. So, it's a matter of fulfilling their commitment, showing up to the shifts that they were supposed to show up to.
Okay.
And getting the job done the way that they're supposed to. So we quickly understand whether the commitment is there or not when they are not locking the gate or the door on the way out.
So you've created tasks or minimum criteria of these are the checklist things that had to get done. Got
exactly.
it. And then attitude, I'm assuming that's either their team or their manager giving them some feedback. How does that filter in?
Yeah. So, this is a very important piece, because if we're judging on attitude, that it really is subjective, right? So my rule of thumb, again, not everybody uses attitude as a performance metric. We do, but you have to have the conversation before you click that needs work.
So that's training from the manager's side.
It's training for the managers. It's forcing them to have the conversations. If you put needs work on attitude,
you better have a good justification.
There better have been a conversation and an understanding from both sides, because what's going to end up happening, you're going to click that button and they're going to get a push notification saying manager rated you as having bad attitude. Or the wording is wrong, but you get an idea of what I'm saying.
Doesn't live up to the company values.
Correct. So what does that mean?
Right.
Well, no one told me that. I had no idea. What are you talking about?
And because it's a 360 system, you see that feedback and you get to rate the manager, then say, why do I have a bad attitude? He never referenced anything.
Right.
I thought I was doing a great job.
So we purposefully did it that the manager gets their rating first, and it's anonymous.
Interesting.
So you rate me as a bad manager. I don't get that feedback until the calendar week.
Oh, wow.
So on Friday, I get one digest rating that says your team,
rated
not
you as...
Paul, your team rated you at a 6 out of 10 because you aren't giving the feedback, you're not spending time on them, and you're being rude, whatever it is, right? And I made those up, but that's just the idea. So you get that at the end, so it doesn't influence what you do the rest of the week with. I know Paul gave me a bad rating. To hell with that guy. I'm going to give him a bad rating.
Right. It becomes this self-perpetuating cycle. Whereas, let's say you do have a bunch of managers that are 6s out of 10s, right? That would be the trick, is figuring out how to get them to see their own intrinsic way of leveling up and being good to their team.
Yep.
And motivating them in the right way. And if it's objective, right, it's not just, do they like me? Because sometimes you have to give hard feedback.
No question. No question.
But if it's objective and it's fair, people respect objective and fair more than they object a soft leader that doesn't get them.
If and when we've had those conversations, which were the not so fun conversations with a manager, 9 times out of 10, it's, you're right. I'm having a hard time. This is going on. I'm tired. I'm working 3 jobs. Awesome. What can we do to make your life better? Would $2 more an hour help you? Right? Which to me, in the grand scheme of things,
maybe that's the case, right? Give them more time, more focus.
Because what we see is a lot of the times when we have managers that have earned a manager position through going through our levels. Right. Nobody just gets a manager position.
Right. They've already demonstrated commitment.
We know that they're better than that.
Interesting.
What's going on at home? My wife is,
something,
whatever it is, right? Or my husband is something, or my kids, or my whatever it might be. And now, you've got the opportunity to fix it or make their lives better. And now you may have just made a lifetime true believer out of that person.
I mean, it's great to, I don't know. I can't think of too many performance reviews where you're looking at the whole individual and not just this narrow sliver of work.
Right.
Right. And not this narrow sliver of work from the last 2 weeks.
Right.
You're realistically looking at a whole assessment, and you're addressing the whole individual.
Right.
Right. There might be more going on externally. Let's find ways of fixing that.
And that movie theater manager might be rated on something else outside of one team.
Sure.
Right? Because they've got sales goals and they've got...
Sure.
That's more of a quarterly... It makes sense.
Different compensation conversation.
It's a different position, different comp, different everything.
That's a good transition to our 6th point. What's number 6?
So obviously it has to build positive culture. Don't do it at all. Right? So the whole point, I'm not trying to catch anybody. I don't want any ahas.
Right.
Right? Everything is communicated in advance. Everything is completely clear. And we're all working towards this goal of a really positive, happy employee culture within the organization.
So when you have that negative conversation with someone, the whole goal is to build that positive team. And you're helping that individual become a whole healthy individual.
Yeah, and if you want to, what I think is one of the coolest things that we did in the system is we actually built it that if you, let's just say, for example, from level 1 to level 2, you had a rough time. You didn't understand the job. It was a rough start for you with the company. Well, as soon as you graduate to level 2, you start over from scratch on your rating scale. Oh. So you are a level 2 employee and the whole rating system starts over. So no longer am I just stuck being that crappy employee.
So you get a fresh start
at
every level.
And those are the conversations we've had. We'll say, hey, dude, we had a rough level 1 or we had a rough level 2. This is it. Level 3 starts tomorrow. Let's get it going. We literally get to start from scratch and you are a brand new employee with us.
What an amazing sort of, I don't know, this sounds weird in context, but it's like a gift of grace. Like you get to start over in this, like you've got to this level. Good job. Like you own your destiny.
It also allowed us to avoid, we've got that one great employee who now is slacking off and blowing it. They don't get to just rest on their laurels and I used to be great.
Right.
I need you to be great now. I don't need you to used to be great.
Right. It works both ways.
Right, it works both ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, number 7.
So obviously it should reward with positive reinforcement and recognition. So the system does that. It literally allows them to level up, earn the incentives that we've deemed to be the most important to them through surveys and so on. And the system actually will celebrate them on our dashboard.
It seems like such a small thing to say, but it's such a big, I don't know, this has probably the biggest impact in an organization because most often 360 feedback or employee performance reviews, because they're done in this long time frame, that the mechanism itself doesn't serve for positive reinforcement or recognition.
No.
It serves as this quiet behind the scenes that's tucked into a file that is tied to compensation. And because it's tied to compensation, more often it doesn't create this positive reinforcement. It's this like stick that they use. Like, you may have been great, but not great enough to get that raise.
Right.
Or not great enough to get the big raise. And so every bit of feedback is tempered or hidden. It's not really driving motivation. So I think there's some magic there that you've kind of baked into it. I think that's really cool.
I truly believe that there is, because exactly what you just said is the way the world works right now. The way the professional world works is that it gets tucked in a file, and eventually someone will say something, and you'll get the good job every now and again. And, there are, systems who try to be consistent about it, but it's just, there's nothing doing what we're doing with this, and we've looked long and hard for it.
Let's go through this again just really quick. Number one, it should be in real time, not tucked away, not hidden. It should be tied to company values and team objectives. And I think kind of the operative word there is objectives, right? It should be objective.
It has to be.
It has to include a 360 view that extends beyond the immediate manager. It's not just tying it to one person's opinion. It should be tied to advancement. It should include both skills, commitment, and attitude criteria. It should be there to build a positive culture, and then it should reward with positive reinforcement and recognition.
Yep.
That's awesome. So if you guys need help with your performance reviews, your real-time feedback, if you need help building a high-performing team, it's great to actually just dive into some of the things that OneTeam360 offers. We'd love to have a conversation, hear more about you and your company. Check us out at OneTeam360. Hit us up on social. You can always just drop a question into chat. We have that on our website. We'd love to hear more from you. Thanks for joining in today.
Bye, guys.
See ya.